Hey, good morning, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix, and we're back for the Astro Weather. And I apologize for the late start today, but I got in pretty late last night, about 2 in the morning. Come on up here, buddy. Let's go. Take your place amongst take your place on your crown. Let's go. Come on, your fans want you. Come on. The astrological cat is in the house today. There he is. Jasper. Go say hi to everybody, Jasper. There he is. Yeah. Take the crown, buddy. Assume your position. Not that, because you'll put your butt in everybody's face. You know, it's interesting. He doesn't like it when I put him in there. He wants to put himself in there. Yes, you can have that sense of accomplishment. Nobody's going to deny you that. Nobody's going to deny you the ritual of you actually putting yourself in your crown. No, nobody will deny you that. I'm just trying to help. Yeah, I know. So I was on the road yesterday, and I got back at about 2:15 in the morning, and the weather conditions were so end of Pisces. It was I was driving through heavy duty, like deep fog and heavy mist, and I could only see, like, I don't know, a few feet in front of the car. I drove home from Houston and went to go see the Golden State Warriors basketball game last night. And I have an interesting story that I'll share over on the 15 Minutes of Flame side of things. But anyway, it was very Piscean and very soupy, fitting journey through the last day of the sign. So today we're going to get into the Astro Weather, and it is now. I got a great start of the day. One of my favorite people to talk about astrologically, because he is such an emblematic figure of his chart that it is. I could go anywhere in his chart and you guys would see exactly what I'm talking about astrologically. But before we get there, let's talk about what is going on. The sun has moved into 0 Aries with the moon at 28 Pisces. So we're not quite there yet, right? We're not quite in the vernal equinox zone, and the moon is just so balsamic. It is the most balsamic moon of the year because it is in the final degrees of Pisces. And so we have this moon Neptune conjunction, and I can attest to that moon Neptune conjunction last night, although the moon was a little on the other side of Neptune. And even today it is drippy. It is a drippy day. And we have a moon Mars square. There's a lot of cranky energy in the air today, super cranky energy. And even the sun, coming in with a Mars square. So look at all the Mars action we have today: Mercury square Mars, Sun square Mars, Moon square Mars, Neptune square Mars. This is the peak of this Mars square cycle. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with Donald Trump and his whole arrest drama, right? This is like the height of the in some ways it's the height of the scapegoat energy. And Trump is coming in at this time of year. I'm going to be on quite frankly later tonight. I'm going to talk more about this, but he's coming in at this time of year and talking about how he is a victim and that you're a victim. And when I say that, I don't mean it in the sense that you're a victim, like say the left sometimes likes to wear their victim badge. but you're a victim of the fact that your government has been stolen from you. You're a victim over the fact that that there are conditions in this country that have degraded to the point where the country's in great crisis and turmoil. And he's basically been pointing this out, and that his arrest is the apotheosis of that victimization by the state. And in so doing, he's taking on, again, sort of a scapegoat status, right? Like his arrest will be the symbolic incarceration for taking on the sins of others, if it happens. And at this point, he may have gotten out in front of it, which Trump will do. And here, get in there. Come on. You want to be in there. You want to be in there. Oh, boy. He's a Taurus. He is stubborn. But then there's also what comes with, the energy this time is the resurrection, right? This is really the day of the resurrection. And we have Easter as a symbolic day of resurrection, but this is the day of resurrection. This is when the astrological new year begins. It's not quite there yet. We're waiting for the moon to catch up. And once the moon catches up, then we have the moon is the egg, right? It's the egg. And so once it moves into Aries and it goes into the new phase, the egg is born, right? The egg is hatched, and it literally is a symbolic egg for this time of year. So there is a high degree of what I would call, cross tension. Even with Mars, as it moves into Cancer, not long from now, we're still going to have the tension of the square, right, with the sun. But it'll be different. It'll be different than when we had the sun in Pisces squaring Mars and Gemini. It'll be different because the sun will be in Aries, and the energy is, you'll see some of this later today. I think you'll see it a lot more tomorrow, where people want to shake off these chains. I mean, that's really what the energy is about. It's about shaking off these chains. And there's going to be a decision to try to do something short term with the Mars at the end of Gemini and ultimately squaring off against the sun. That's very short term conflict-based energy, which isn't necessarily bad. But Mars in Cancer is unsteady. It moves sideways, it moves backwards. It doesn't approach the direction with a sense of, direction. It does, but it does so haltingly, hesitatingly. But we do have the Mars-Saturn trine, which I believe is good for long-term application of will, okay? The short-term stuff with the friction and the tension and the squares can be interesting if you're looking for something to kind of spark you into action. Not all squares are bad, right? Sometimes squares are about friction and tension, and some people do well with friction and tension, and that's what they need in their lives in order to make things happen, in order to spark them into action. And clearly, this is one of those days, and there it will be a temptation in the days ahead to do that. And there's theoretically, again, nothing wrong with it. The only thing with Mars and Cancer, we're not quite there yet. The only thing with Mars and Cancer is that there can be at times a rethinking of the course of action you've taken, which is typical of Mars and Cancer. So even if you're trying to spark something and get unstuck, right, with Mars and Cancer, there can be a sense of, I may have done the wrong thing. There can be second guessing, and there can be some doubt. But it feels like there's this emotional tension in the air, and people are really looking for release. So let's say, for instance, you run across one of those people, at least knowing that that's what they're going through might be of some kind of support or insight into your process and theirs. With the moon and Neptune, we can be the moon Neptune conjunction. We can be a bit unconditional in some ways. Like if the energy isn't too harsh, or if the slights aren't too intense, right? If the actions aren't too jagged, there's a potential for being able to kind of hold a space today. And kind of, yeah, I know you're frustrated. I know you're having some issues today. Right? But I think there's a limit to that as well. You don't want to be a doormat, because with the sun in Aries and Mercury in Aries, and you get these Mars squares, people could just run right over you. So I feel like if you have to be in a situation like that, it might be better to just retreat into that moon Neptune conjunction until the moon emerges later in the day, and you can say, you know what, you were an asshole. I didn't appreciate that. What do you mean I was an asshole? You were kind of an asshole. Tell me, why was I an asshole? And then you can go through the checklist. And, you're right, I was an asshole. And I'm sorry. Oh, are we getting an apology in Aries season? That would be something, wouldn't it? We also have a Venus-Pluto square. Yes, Venus-Pluto square. But that's going to change over the course of the next couple of days. Venus-Pluto squares are intense. They have some eroticism that are connected, some eroticism that's connected to that square. A lot of times with Venus-Pluto squares, it can feel like your relationship is going to end, but it doesn't. It just takes you deeper into the pit of some kind of psychosexual dynamic or dilemma that you're facing in your life. And what do you do with that? Well, that's a good question. Therapy, perhaps. But it's not a square that's going to last very long, honestly. Jupiter is king. Jupiter is king. It's moved into the second decan, and that puts it in the Leo decan, which is why I say it's king in this decan. It's right on the ascendant today. We are going to talk about Aries. We're going to talk about Aries in a big way here in a second with our star of the day. So the energy is people want to get going. They want to get moving. They want to, break out of this somnambulistic state. Somnambulism, by the way, is sleepwalking, if you aren't aware of the term. And that's kind of what we've been going through here. For 2 years now, people have been sleepwalking. Well, some of us have not been. Some of us have been walking and running into sleepwalkers, running into the army of the dead, zombies just going through the motions in their life. And the energy with the spring equinox is anything but that. And we're just going to catch it with Mars at the final degree of Gemini, and there's nothing really left. We're talking about today be at 28, tomorrow be at 28 as well. And then I think on Thursday, Friday moves into 29 anoretic. So this 28-degree Gemini Mars is skitsy. It's really skitsy. And we have this in conjunct with Pluto. Lots of, I was on the road last night. To me, this is like the in conjunct. This is total in conjunct Mars Pluto. I was on the road last night, and I was in the fast lane, headed into Houston, and I was, I had a reasonable amount of space between me and the car in front of me. And in Texas, we have these Ford F-150 trucks. And sometimes they'll jack them up and they'll put like giant tires on them. And of course, people drive the way that the truck looks. And so this guy puts on his blinker and he wants to move in between me and the car in front of me. And I'm like, fuck that. You're not going to get in here because there's not a lot of space. And just because you have, 4x4 lifted tank on wheels four wheels. You're not gonna get in here. And so he comes in behind me, and as he did that, I looked behind me, and the amount of space behind me was significant. I mean, all he had to do was just slow down a little bit. But that wasn't his mindset. And of course, he was pissed because I didn't allow him to come into my lane, and he's right up on my ass. And so then what happens is that all of a sudden, the cars in front of me, the brakes start to hit. And I was following this situation with the cars in front of me, and the car in front of me did one of those moves where they moved out of the lane into the shoulder so that they didn't hit the car in front of them, right? And so I managed to brake, and I was fine, right? And then the guy behind me, who'd been on my ass because he wasn't happy over the fact that I didn't let him in, all of a sudden he became much more respectful of the distance. But then I thought about it as I was driving down the road not long after that by actually not letting him in, I might have averted an accident. See, that's the Mars in conjunct. That's where I was going with this. There was a story here. And Mars was in conjunct Pluto last night. And so had I let him in with his aggressive driving tendencies, I don't think that guy would have been able to put his brakes on in time and stop. And if he did, I would have been behind him, right? And he didn't have just any kind of vehicle. It wouldn't be like running into another car that's the same height as mine. No, my windshield would have ran right into the bed of his truck. That's exactly what would have happened. So I would have had the bed of that guy's truck in my windshield last night. So I was able to stave off what would have been absolute brutal accident by not allowing the guy in. The Mars in conjunct. Now, you may say I was stubborn. No, I wasn't stubborn. Well, I was a little bit. But I prevented something. So this is the Mars in conjunct today. If you're out on the road, ladies and gentlemen, please drive safely today. Drive safely with this, because we're getting to the end of this Mars Gemini energy, and it's just all over the place. We have these squares going on, which are very, very impatient. There's a lot of impatience in the air. I think we're good. I'll be on quite frankly tonight. I'll talk more about the Trump thing on his show. I'll have more on my show, which I will talk about just in a second. And I have to go soon because my show's going to start soon. But before I go, we got to look at our star of the day. And it is one of my absolute favorite people to talk about, astrologically or otherwise. Today's star of the day is Ayrton Senna. Why do I love talking about Senna? Because Senna is a prototypical Aries, he's not just, I mean, the guy is at 0 Aries. He's a race car driver. He has his sun, right? His sun ingressing into the 3rd house, which is Gemini's house, in motion and travel and speed. And Senna was a speed freak, an absolute speed freak. And he also is an Aquarius rising. He's just different. This guy's just wired different. And he was accident prone, which you'll see with people that have Aquarius rising. Aquarius rising people can be really accident prone because they're ruled by Uranus. And of course, he has Mars over here in Aquarius. He was a very aggressive driver. I'm going to show you a couple other quotes with Senna, which really typify his ability to embody the sign of Aries. So we have the rule of the chart in the 1st house in Aquarius, and it's opposing Uranus, right? This guy's explosive, very, very explosive. And he has this long running feud with Alain Proust, who was a Pisces, by the way. And he and Proust, their feuds were epic. And Senna was an Aries. He was always battling with somebody. He was battling with the commissioner of Formula One, battling with Proust. He was a fighter, this guy, an absolute fighter. And what's interesting was his driving style. He's got Jupiter in Capricorn, 2 degrees, moon in Capricorn. So there's a big part of Senna that is also very, very cool, right? He's got that Capricornian cool. But his driving style is that when the races got wet, this is the old days of Formula One. They would drive through cities, they would drive on tracks. It wasn't like today where it's all very, very controlled. In fact, he was the last person to actually die in a Formula One race, which I'll talk about in a second. But when it rained, Senna took advantage of the rain, and he would push it. He knew how to drive in rain. And so we have Mercury in Pisces, and he has a trining Neptune, right? So he has this ability to kind of navigate through water in a way that other drivers couldn't do. He would always, other drivers would be more cautious. Not Senna. He knew how to move, across the sheets of water and advance his position. The other thing with Senna is that he was psychic, very, very psychic, and he had an almost mystical relationship with driving. And listen to this quote. He said, "And suddenly I realized that I was no longer driving the car consciously. I was driving it by kind of instinct, only I was in a different dimension." And we see Neptune here on the midheaven. And Senna is a Catholic. He's from Brazil. So he's a big, big believer in God. I mean, this guy he was also a bit of a playboy, with the Aquarius rising. He's got Neptune squaring his ascendant, which is really, really interesting. It's this kind of war between his Aquarian self, which is iconoclastic, and I wouldn't call Senna punk rock at all, but he had that vibe about him. He was sort of the enfant terrible of racing. And then Neptune on the midheaven, which is seeking this more kind of placid and more sort of mystical communion with the world. But he talked about how he would enter into these states, or almost like religious states, fugue states, where he would drive, and it had to do with speed. Right? It was the speed that would send him into it. Nobody ever talked about racing before that with Senna, or after that with Senna, in the same kind of language. And I'll give you an example of his kind of Aries nature, and then I gotta go. But his quotes, to me, it's like his quotes just freaking scream Aries. He died. I talked about this on the Sunday night show. He died in a race in San Marino on May Day, and he had part of the steering column launch into his helmet, right? And it just missed the part of his helmet right above his visor. Had it just hit him a half an inch higher, he would be alive. But it didn't. It pierced the visor and went straight through his eye and killed him. And look at some of these quotes that Senna has here. Let me see. It was like I was in a tunnel, not only the tunnel under the hotel, but the whole circuit was a tunnel. I was just going and going, more and more and more and more. I was way over the limit, but I was still able to find even more. Jupiter square Sun. With regard to performance, commitment, effort, dedication, there is no middle ground, where you do something very well or not at all. He's an Aries. He's all in. He's all in. And so you touch this limit, something happens, and suddenly you can go a little bit further with your mind power. That's an Aries quote. Your instinct and the experience as well. You can fly very high. He's got the best quotes. I was not designed to come in second or third. I am designed to win. He talks about racing in his blood, which is a very Aries thing, right? Aries rules the blood. And he said, I have no idols, which is a very Aries thing to do. Here's another quote. With regard to performance, commitment, effort, dedication, there is no middle ground. Or you do something very well or not at all. I am not designed to come in second. We saw that one. I mean, these are just, if you want Aries quotes, they're all over the place here. Here's another one. That's the same one. Instinct, determined, fly very high. I'm not designed to come in second. Let me see if I get another one. He came from money. And the thing about him is that he had this disorder when he was a kid. And, he would kind of get up and kind of stumble and walk, fall down. And he overcame this weird disorder that he had in his life. I believe that we start to see our true personalities when we go through the most difficult moments. This is when we get stronger. Right? A typical Aries quote. Being second is to be the first of the ones who lose. I mean, this guy lived this in a way that other people just can't even imagine. The danger sensation is exciting. The challenge is to find new dangers. He was kind of an adrenaline junkie too. If a person has no dreams, they no longer have any desire to live. Dreaming is necessary. Although in the dream, reality should be glimpsed. For me, this is a principle of life. Senna was he was a guy that had he lived, and he can't live, right? It's not part of his mythos. He can't live. But if he lived, he would have been huge. Like, this is a guy who has almost avatar status. And he was incredibly charitable with the people of Brazil. And when he died in Brazil, it was like Kennedy dying. That's how big he was. That's how much of an impact. This guy had. He talks about how he was going to die. And he basically said that he didn't want to stick around. He wanted to if he was going to go out, he was going to go out the way he went out. Let me see if I have this quote here. I'll just leave you with this quote, this Senna quote. I think it's a clip from the movie, The Speed of Sound. Let me see. I'm just going to play this. I don't know if it has any dialogue, but it'll give you a sense of Senna. Showed off kart racing. Kart racing. This is a great documentary. highly recommend this movie. The weekend that he died, there was a Grand Prix in San Marino, and there were 3 crashes that had occurred during the trials, speed trials, qualifying rounds. And out of those crashes, 2 people died. And Senna knew he was going to die. He knew it. He knew he was going to die. If you watch the movie, you can see the heaviness. It's really intense and deep and profound. He just knew it. He knew he was going, and he did. And again, that's Neptune on the midheaven, and Mercury in Pisces retrograde, and Neptune retrograde, but he kept moving forward, right? Like he kept moving forward. He was in Aries, and he knew, and he could not go through with what he went through. It was the Aries energy. It was like that was just how he was going to live and how he was going to die. Anyway, a really inspirational figure. If you want to get out of the doldrums, watch the movie and tap into some of his quotes. Ayrton Senna, today's star of the day. Hey, please meet me over on 15 Minutes of Flame. I may talk about this a little bit more. Boy, I'm really behind schedule today, and I totally apologize for that. But let me just bring this up here. We'll get back on track tomorrow. I'll be back here at 8 o'clock. Might be using StreamYard tomorrow, so we'll have the countdown and everything, and people will know. They'll get notifications and all that stuff. That's the one thing about StreamYard that's better than Zoom. All right, thanks for being here, everybody. Go get your truehempscience.com products. Type in 15MINS if you want the free product. truehempscience.com for some of the best CBD that you can get. And I hope to see you over in 15 Minutes Flame. Thanks for your patience. Bye for now.